Well, why don't we start with introductions, and maybe a few more will join us. I'm Stephanie Bloomhagen. I'm the Executive Director of Farms, and we wanted to organize. There was a lot of energy around the Farm to School grant at our October NDLFDA meeting, and we thought it would be useful to organize a session where we could all put our heads together, see where there were possibilities for collaboration or ways to support each other, because Farm to School is really important and a way that a benefit could be a great benefit to our state. So Mary, would you start by introducing yourself? And I see that you said you have to leave at 10:30.
Good morning, everybody. Yes, I'm Mary Podal. Always glad to join you all. I'm the state conservationist for NRCS. So USDA supports local foods, and then also have kind of a local interest as my son does farmers markets.
Great. Fame.
Hi, Fane Stringer Henry. I'm a social worker with a passion for food justice and food security in Grand Forks. I'm here to learn a little bit more and see if there's any way I can help, see if there's anything that I can do to help bring this to my community as well.
Great. Melanie.
We started talking and I didn't unmute myself and the whole work, so it was like, oh yeah. I'm with USDA Rural Development also, and I'm on the rural development side, and I'm the single family housing program director. But I've been involved in this for a long time already, so I just know that you have our support, and like I said, it's a huge interest and benefit to the state. So
Definitely. Quinn. Are you with us, Quinn?
Yes, sorry, hi. My name's Quinn, and I'm just kind of here listening to the call to kind of see what's going on and see what I can be a part of.
Great. Holly, glad you got the login info this morning.
Yeah, I don't know where it went in my email. I'm Holly Mobby. I'm director of the Entrepreneurial Center for Horticulture at Dakota College at Bottineau and director of the North Dakota Farmers Market and Growers Association. So in the past, my role with the Farm to School program has been to do workshops and some education on both the producer and the school side to talk about how they can work together and to help spread the word to the producers that we work with about opportunities to selling to schools and how they can do that and provide that kind of education. So if something comes along with this, we certainly would be happy to provide the same types of services.
Great. Karen.
Hi, this is Karen Ahrens. I have been engaged in promoting this for a long time. I recently went back and found a presentation I made when I was a consultant to the North Dakota Department of Agriculture to the North Dakota School Nutrition Association in 2009, encouraging schools to get involved. And I just think that fits and starts, depending on grant funding, is what's been happening over the last 11 plus years, and would love that there could be someone for whom it was a full-time job to do this work.
Heidi.
Hi, I'm the land grant director at Chanhaska-Chicana Community College in Fort Totten, North Dakota, and I'm interested in learning more about this grant. I don't know that this is something that we'll do right now, but if someone in the area wanted to take the lead, we'd, you know, provide support. And then maybe in future years, it'd be something that we'd look at more. I think we just don't have a lot of, we stretched a little bit at the moment, but I want to know more about it.
Definitely. Deb, I'm glad you were able to join us.
I'm Deb Egland. I work in DPI, child nutrition with schools. And we have had some farm to school grants and done conferences and trainings. I think it just needs to be people who want to do it, actually do it, instead of we keep telling them to do it. That's about all I know, I guess. It's just something that the person has to want to do. You can't make them. That's all I can say about that.
And Ellen.
Good morning, everyone. It's Ellen Knudsen Duffy with River Road Gardens in Bismarck, and I am also on the board of NDLFDA. And I'm just here to learn more about the program and what is available for farmers. So thanks for organizing this, Stephanie and Felicity.
Thanks for joining us, Ellen, and thank you everyone for joining us. So Felicity gathered a lot of the key points, the talking points, and has links to the RFA and the Farm to School website, which has a wealth of resources and information. They did have 2 webinars last week. I'm not sure. I asked yesterday in the meeting if anyone had attended the webinars, and I didn't hear anybody say they had, but we're hoping that they will post the recordings soon. So this grant, you know, the most important thing I was on my mind is when's the deadline, and we do have until January 8th. So that is good. So the purpose is to provide assistance in implementing farm to school programs that improve access to local foods in eligible schools. The award ceiling is $100,000. And eligibility is also always a key point. It says state governments, Native American tribal organizations, independent school districts, county governments, Native American tribal governments, city or township governments, nonprofits, and small businesses. I think an interesting thing is that they have some new funding tracks this year. Looks like they changed their planning grant to a new category called turnkey grants. And I was just skimming the RFA. I didn't get very far, but it looks like these turnkey grants they give you a template of specific activities that you can choose from. So it's a predefined set of activities. And then they also still have the implementation grants and state agency grants. So really, I think, you know, we just wanted to spend some time to see what people were thinking, what organizations were thinking about applying for this, and what projects they have in mind, or if they're still, you know, forming a project plan. So we went around and did introductions, but maybe now we could go around and speak more in depth about how we see ourselves and our organizations applying or partnering, or what we're looking for from this. And I know some of you said that you're just learning, and that's fine. So I can start by saying that farms used to manage farm to school. It was before I was the executive director. I I don't know a lot about that because I haven't been able to find a lot of information in our files, but I'm here to play a supportive role. Farms currently has a full slate of programming and activities that we are offering, our Farm Beginnings course, Farm Dreams internships. So we have our own educational programs that we offer. So I don't think I have the capacity to take the lead on any farm to school projects, but I'm definitely here and able to play a supportive role. Holly, can I start with you?
Sure. We're very much like you in that right now I have a full slate of grants that I'm trying to manage. But as I mentioned before, we certainly would be willing to assist with any educational needs that are within whoever's application, or to try and match producers with schools. I do, for whoever might consider writing this, I was a part, and I'm sure Karen Ahrens as well, of the farm to school efforts way back when. And I have extensive files as to the applications, the things that were done, the pieces that were created. I've even got the PowerPoints from the workshops that we did. So if anybody, and the surveys that were done of schools, the surveys that were done of producers, if anybody needs or wants those to see background information, they can certainly contact me.
I'm so glad to hear that. I found a folder labeled Farm to School Surveys in the archives, and it did not contain Farm to School surveys. So I'm glad that you have them. Mary Podol, I know that you had some great input at our October meeting, and you've done some farm to school work in the past. I'd love to hear what you're thinking.
We have, and fortunately the school is very flexible, and that's what we absolutely need, because we're both learning. So a couple observations is that farmers need it to be very easy. And one of the things I think is missing, so whoever writes this grant, should be something like an app, or that allows somebody to connect farmers with schools, like an Amazon list almost. It's like, okay, I need tomatoes. Maybe you're not going to get all your tomatoes from Smith Farms, but between Smith Farms and Podol Farms and Stahl Farms and everybody else, we might come up with enough tomatoes to supply that school. So I have some ideas within the grant. Of course, being USDA or just being a private person, I don't have the ability to write the grant. There is one person missing here. Rachel Howard is been hired by the Bismarck Parks. I'm not sure how that works, but somebody within Bismarck, the city, pays her, and one of her jobs is to do farm to school. So somebody might reach out. I don't know, Felicity or you, Stephanie, who would be the appropriate person, or I could, but maybe that's something she could do within her job, is to write the grant and to help manage it. Yeah, I think schools are interested. And the other piece that's missing is a conversation with the cooks. Then we've done conversation with the administrators and the people running the grants to have the school to farm, our farm to school program, but we really need somebody to facilitate a conversation with the farmers and the cooks. So my ideas, and then my support, both personally and within as USDA, helping with plant materials and of course high tunnels and technical assistance.
Can you I'm taking notes in the document. Can you clarify that what you mean by USDA can help with plant materials, high tunnels, and assistance? Are you talking about EQIP grants or?
Yes, some EQIP grants, some collaborative conservation grants. And when I think about plant materials, I think about the pollinator plantings or the erosion control plantings around high tunnels for a farmer or a small community.
Okay. Deb, I would love to hear your perspective from the Department of Public Instruction.
What do you mean, what perspective, I guess?
Are your organization has had these grants in the past? Are you planning to apply again?
No.
Projects that you see a need for?
Well, I think schools need to apply to actually do something, the people who want to do something, because let's see, on the last grant that we had, I did sub-grants out to schools, and they were very interested in that. Some of them had like egg classes that hadn't been, I don't know what you would say, going, I guess, for 20 years. And all of a sudden they had interest going again. So they wanted to do egg and do some greenhouses, high tunnels. Some people asked for equipment to cut up melons that they were buying local. Somebody wanted like a shed to keep their school gardening tools in, a little trailer, because somebody had a school garden that was 3 miles away. Things like that. And I think we've gotten to the point where they know what farm to school is and they realize it's a good thing. But if they have an actual project where they need some money, and that's why USDA made these turnkey grants that were much, much easier, because before, even Michelle from Bismarck tried to apply and said it was way too hard. She just couldn't do it. But they've really streamlined it to make it a lot easier that actual schools can apply with a real targeted, this is what I want to do, this is what I need. And I mean, we can help them answer questions and things, but I would really, really like to see the grant money go to actual schools doing farm to school, instead of just us having more conferences, talking about it, whatever. I mean, actually do some actual work in farm to school now. Oh, I forgot about something. I'm on a national task force. There's only 9 of us, writing a producer training, because every time they talk about farm to school, they always say, who's missing? The farmers. They don't have time to come to these meetings. So we talk to school people, we talk to community people, all the groups that you guys are from, but there's no farmers there. So we've made this toolkit that is not totally ready to roll out yet. I don't know why these people, besides me, for whatever reason, can't work because of COVID. I just don't get it. But we have to get it out between December and April, do some pilots on it. Originally, the first one was going to be in February in Bozeman, but now I guess that's canceled. And I'm not sure when the first one is, but I've said they need to be in little modules, like 45 minutes, that we could have on a website like USDA's website, that if people had a question about a certain thing, they could click in and just see this little segment, because no one's going to want to come and sit through a 1.5-day meeting about how great it is to do farm to school. They want pretty much specific things, like I'm working with meat, I want to know meat. I'm working with a fruit or a vegetable, I want to know that. Or just, I want a little back. It does actually start with the background about child nutrition, what's required at breakfast, lunch, snack, different meals, and where they could fit in local products, which is pretty nice. It's really consolidated, but that's been a huge, I'd say, thing missing for a long time, is just producer training. Because if they come and sit in a room with a bunch of cooks, they just want to pair up with a cook and try to get to sell to her, but they don't have any information. So I think this toolkit will be great.
Okay. So I'm hearing that, farms provides general sustainable ag business education to farmers. We help them create a sustainable farm business and a plan. But this training is specific to, sounds like, school requirements, nutrition, probably food safety.
And child cares too. I mean, it's real specific. Schools are so much more complicated than anything else, but it does mention in there also selling to like child cares, hospitals, other places like that as well.
Okay. Melanie, I'd love to hear your perspective. Have you worked directly with some schools or producers?
Not necessarily, you know, as far as our jobs, we handle a variety of different, we are different, of course, than Mary Podol's side of it, but there are individuals out there that are producers, and there are those that can assist with this. And I think, like Mary said, I think there's individuals that need to be brought in or made it, you know, of interest. Sometimes, like I said, they don't have the time. So how to reach out to those, I think, is one of those key things that needs to be done. I think it's great on what we have available. And like I said, our efforts are to assist in any way we can. So if there's something from rural development side that we can do, we would sure like to help. So I know that's kind of a roundabout way, but it's, you know, if there's something we can do to assist you guys, we sure will.
Robert, you joined after we had done introductions. Would you like to introduce yourself and talk about your interest in Farm to School?
Hi, I'm Robert Barfield. I am I'm in the process of building 2 greenhouses for, my camera's not working, so I apologize. And I am trying to become a producer, and I would like to sell to the public school systems with my produce. I'm building a aquaponics greenhouse, which uses fish and produces vegetables. That's
Great.
pretty much it for me.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
Oh, Karen, I'd love to hear what you are thinking.
Oh, I think I love all the input that folks are giving and getting information out to farmers in quick bursts and farmers not having time to attend about the efforts that have gone on in the past and people really wanting to do it, both the school and the growers. Examples that used to take place were in Valley City when there was a person who served as an aggregator for several farmers from their farmers market to help make sure those quantities can be filled. So I think that's true, and I think that getting the funding out to schools is important, but hearing all the information back, and I'm not saying it because I have that capacity or time to do it and not looking for a job, but I really believe that there needs to be someone who can help keep this all moving along in the state, and also help share between farmers and schools what's working and what's not working. So that's, I don't really have much more to add than that, except I'm really glad there are so many people on the call today and so many people that are interested.
Me too. Deb had a question for Robert, asking where you're located. I do know he's in Burlington, near Minot, and I think she's interested in your aquaponics project and wondering if you're working with Neil Doty. Oh, are you still with us, Robert? I can tell you that, Deb, that Robert went through Farm Beginnings course, And I think he's been working with Keith Knutson, but I don't think he's working with Neil Doty right now.
Okay, well, I mean, I hate to butt in here, but the thing is, this Neil Doty a few years ago came to our office and we had a few food service directors come. He was thinking about aquaponics, and I think they decided that strawberries, and then I'm not sure if it was lettuce or broccoli would be the best things to grow. And I cannot remember if he had an actual person working on it or what happened with it, but this Neil Doty guy is just a go-getter kind of cheerleader to help people. And actually, I worked for him a long time ago in 1977, but he is a serial scientist, and I don't know what else. He's very smart, but he is a real smart person on aquaponics, what can be done. And we already did check with schools, the things, I know strawberries for sure. And I'm questioning whether it was romaine or broccoli for the other thing would be the best things to grow that they could use all year long.
Great.
I'll check with some schools around there and see if they'd be interested. Burlington cooks are pretty nice.
Between me and Felicity, Deb, we will make sure that you get connected with Robert. Happy to talk with you. He'd be excited. So we know there's a need. We have a lot of great ideas for what this grant could be used for. It sounds like we need to find somebody who has the capacity, an entity or a person who has the capacity to take the lead on a project like this. Is that a role for North Dakota Local Food Development Alliance? Although Felicity is an AmeriCorps. She is only allowed to spend up to 10% of her time on fundraising, and I'm not sure if she is allowed to write federal grants. And I don't have the capacity right now to take the lead. But we could, you know, I'm saying I'm not sure where we go from here, but it's definitely useful to, you know, put our heads together. Ellen is asking if each individual school applies for the grant or if it is by school district. I don't have the answer.
Either way, that could be either way. It just depends. If you're a school, you're a school. So whether you're one in a district or a whole district, but I would think that not maybe one school in Fargo would apply all on their own without their administration knowing. But it could be either way. It's not like you have to say, we're going to do this in all 22 of our sites. If you wanted to say, we're going to start with one site, this is what we're going to do, they would be so happy just to get that one application.
Maybe this is a question that both Deb and Stephanie can respond to. Deb, you and I have worked on this before, and I think I totally agree with you when you say that the schools themselves maybe should be the applicants, because then it just seems to go better. They have more invested in it. They've got more skin in the game when they themselves own it. And so my question or my comment, I guess, is this: is there some way that the North Dakota Local Food Development could work with Deb to just get a quick piece out to the schools to say, hey, have you thought about this? Maybe you had one of those mini grants in the past. and you did start a garden, or you did start, you know, your greenhouse up again. Now we are several years down the road from where we were then. You know, is there something more that you need or could use now to make this truly happen? And the other thought was especially targeting the consortiums that are out there. There are school consortiums that work together among several schools, and many times in those cases, because they're pooling their resources, there's someone within that resource pool that may have the time to oversee it, write it, that sort of thing. So, you know, maybe the fact is right now, and all of us on the call are kind of at our limits as to the projects that we've undertaken right now, but maybe what we can do is really get the word out to those consortiums and those schools and encourage them and say, you know, it's been streamlined, it's easier this time. If you do write it, please come to us for help. We will help you find the producers. We will help you with our toolkits. It was just a thought.
Well, I did already advertise that the new Farm to School grant is out and it's easier, and here are the webinars to watch. And I watched the webinars. They were pretty good. They did make it sound really simple, but I can't say that I actually clicked in to try to do it to see how simple it was. But I guess I'm thinking like Holly, at my star salad bar in the whole state is at Bottineau School. I took a new staff person there in October a couple of years ago, and she was, oh my God, I love school lunch, because their salad bar goes down the whole gym. And they have little, I thought they had Post-its that said Deb, but they said DCV, Dakota Community. Oh,
Dakota
anyway.
College at Bottineau. Yeah.
Right, that's what it said. And when they sent me another picture about all their stuff, all the melons and everything else that they got from you, I think if you could help just them, there's this Kelly Olson who took over for Deb Weber there, and maybe get like the machines that West Fargo got for processing melons that she gets from some local farmer, maybe find out what they could use, or what your students or whoever is doing this could use, and help her put in for a grant. I think that would just be fantastic, because I just feel like our people who are actually doing something, if we like help them a little bit, prodded them along instead of trying to find new customers, would just be so much easier. Because if you already have a proven partnership going that's working out, I just think it would look better on a grant than, well, I'm thinking about starting something, this is what I might be doing. It's just so vague. I think that's why they made these turnkey ones, so that people who had an actual project that they had done a little legwork on. I got Elgin, they're working on a beef to school deal, and they were so excited. They got a freezer from me and an equipment grant, and now they have a plan at least to apply for this grant. I hope they don't get scared, but I'll keep talking to them and see what I can do. And Jamie has a guy in their department, I forgot his name, I feel like it's Nathan Krob, I might have that wrong, that works with like butchering, that can help them because they want to start a butchering class and get like the equipment for that. Those are great projects that I know would get funded. Okay,
Deb,
this, what? Okay.
do the schools need technical assistance with like just the process of writing the grant?
Yes, they are scared to death. When I made my little mini grant, I thought I was going to get my hand slapped by USDA. So USDA people, cover your ears. But I made it real easy, just one piece of paper that said, what's your name, what's your contact, what do you want to do, and how much money do you need to do it? And then that was my mini grant. Nothing like all the forms they have to fill out on sam.gov to get a federal grant. But anybody who's kind of interested like that, I think if you just said, hey, I know how to do these grant things. Tell me what you want to do when you're ready to sit down, and we can get you entered in there. They have DUNS numbers. They don't know it, but they have DUNS numbers, because that's what we use to give them money from us.
Yeah.
It's just kind of scary to them. And I think if somebody was doing something or already had a little plan, and then they sat down with a helper who could help them actually enter it into the grant application, that would help a lot.
Agreed, Deb. You know, the cooks are not grant writers. The kitchen
No.
staff are not grant writers. And the administration, as long as the kids are fed, don't care. Sorry, I mean, that sounded really rude, but I want to address, as long as Deb, you're chatting away here. Quinn had a question. Quinn has an inquiry regarding menu creation. Has there been any work done in the past? Does anyone know if there's resources available to learn more? And you of all people know the menu creation end of things better than any of us.
Well, they make their own. And it's kind of funny. They'll say, oh my gosh, they can't like put something different on there because I could take any menu in the state right now, cut out all the squares, mix them up, put them down, it'd be the same menu. They're not that unique. But we have this Pride of Dakota Day in September all the time where they're supposed to really promote North Dakota products. And Jamie's ag department has done wonderful posters about potatoes and honey and beef and different things that they send out to them, if that's what you're talking about. But they're looking for new ideas. So if anybody had an idea of a product, and of course the way to prepare it or recipe to showcase it for Pride of Dakota Day, that would be fantastic. It's in probably about September 20th every year. They are looking for new ideas. That would be my number one place, I guess, if you mean menu development. But we've made cycle menus. They just don't want to do them. They want to do what they came up with on their own. But
Well,
they love recipes.
If I remember right too, from our previous years we've worked on this, one of the obstacles that we ran into, Quinn, was staffing and equipment in each of the schools. The knowledge and ability of the staff that are in the kitchen to deal with raw produce, not only maybe their knowledge, but their time as well. Many of these kitchen workers are part-time, and it's so much easier just to open a bag and pour it in than have to peel the carrots and slice the carrots. And I think that's why, you know, Deb was hinting at maybe working with us at DCB, working with Bottineau Public Schools to help them get some equipment that would help them process those raw vegetables quicker, easier. You know, so some of it comes down to staffing, knowledge and time, and some of it comes down to space. It takes more space to hold that raw unprocessed produce than to stuff the bags in a box in a freezer. You know, so they rely on building their menus around what their current distributors have for them that fits with their time and knowledge. Am I correct in saying that, Deb?
Yes, that's right.
So what I'd like to say on that is a little bit more clarification as to what I mean. So one of the things that I've studied extensively is the overall supply chain of just a food system. And what I think I'm trying to get to is that one of the biggest bottlenecks I see, not just in North Dakota or the local area, but the regions as a whole that are trying to develop these things, are the different parts of the supply chain that allow for consistency and a more sustainable model. So like, for example, if I'm a producer that's up and coming and I'm looking to enter into this sphere, well, let's just say that I have a school district that is 100% on board, all the players are there, and like, it's great. But I don't know what they want and what volume and what consistency. And in order to build these contracts, in order to build these cash flow projections for both a business as well as for a kitchen to consistently be receiving a product, there has to be something that says, this is what we need. And I think that a menu would be one of the better ways to enter into developing a supply chain, because it would allow for the schools to price out what they can actually afford, the students to be involved in like what they'll actually eat, and then for the producers to know at what quantities and when they could, you know, produce that, and if they would even be up for that. Because like in Robert's example, if you're trying to produce something without knowing how much your local district can buy or purchase, then it's impossible to run that through a business model to say that I can or cannot do this at this rate. And I was just wondering if there's been any legwork done in that sphere, whether it be what students actually want to eat, what school districts can actually afford and process? And would it be more economical for them to process it on location, or do we need to have a separate entity? Where do these pieces of the supply chain need to be? But all that in my mind begins with knowing what actually needs to be produced and who's actually going to eat it, or who's actually going to consume that product. And so would this grant, I guess my question is would this grant be something that could apply to that? And if so, where do you begin?
Deb, maybe you can answer the whether or not this grant applies to that question. And then I'd like to address how Botno's handling that.
Well, I guess I'm not really understanding, like, if you think we're going to make a menu that says you are going to have broccoli, strawberries, lettuce, beef sliders, tacos on these certain days. No, they hate that. They like to think that their menu is unique and they make their own. And then I guess the amounts, it depends. Every school is different. I have schools ranging from 7 kids to 1,200 kids, and districts from 7 kids to 13,000 kids. So it's huge. And I guess I would say concentrate on your own area. Like Robert, how far is he going to go to deliver? He's not going to care what's going on in Fargo or probably not even Williston, but in that Burlington Minot area, that's where he needs to concentrate. That's why it's really tough to do anything like statewide, because if the word's local, I mean, that's not statewide, that's local. So I just would say who's ever going to do a high tunnel or aquaponics, whatever they're going to do, find out in your local area how much they're buying, how much they could possibly up that if they had a consistent supplier, because that's why Neil Doty's strawberry, other item that I think was lettuce deal, was so, I don't know what you'd say, appealing to the cooks, because they said the strawberries and lettuce that they got during the winter was horrible. And that's why that they picked those 2 products, as if he was going to do something, concentrate on those. Just ask the local people what they would like, but kids love berries. I can tell you, if you could find a way to make good berries available all year long, you could sell them. They love them. And I don't know, that's it, Holly, what do you have?
Well, Quinn, I don't know how much you've talked to April about this, but you know, here's how we started with Botno Public Schools. We sat down, we had a conversation with them face to face over a year ago, year and a half, whatever, and said, okay, what do you go through? Because these schools have records. They know what they've bought over the last year. They know how many, you know, heads of lettuce. They know how many tomatoes. And they know how much of it they buy on a weekly basis. They also know what they paid for it throughout the year. And so they shared with us their amounts weekly and yearly on all the produce that they bought and the prices they paid. Then we looked at that list and said, okay, these are the 2 or 3 or 4 things that we can consistently provide. We can provide lettuce, we can provide cucumbers, we can, you know, whatever, onions. And here's what our price would be. Now, our price was a little higher on some things and matched to what they were paying on other things. And then we sat down again, we had another meeting. We decided, okay, this is what we're going to provide to you each week throughout the year. Came up with an agreement, and that worked very well for us until COVID hit. And so I definitely have to say we are not selling to Botno Public School right now. They stopped selling on that agreement with us because of COVID, you know, so rightfully so. They don't, half the kids aren't there. They don't know when the kids are going to be there. You know, so that all kind of went downhill. We're hoping when COVID gets better and we can get the school year and the children back to where they belong in their seats in school, that we can resume that. But that was the process. The school and us sat down. They know how much they've purchased. And that was one way that April could build her budget for the year, you know, going back to what you're saying about budgeting and finance and things like that. You know, she based her budget on this many pounds of lettuce, this many pounds of cucumber to Botno Public School each week during these weeks.
Yeah, and so I guess what I'm saying is there a place or a way that we could compile all that information to something that's like tangible enough to where a person could put that into their business plan. Let's say they went to a lender, they could show this example of a working model of a product that's being created, being sold, and being purchased. Therefore, they can justify the upfront cost of producing that item for producers that want to come into that sphere. Because not just do the schools need to be, you know, wanting to purchase locally, but there has to be producers willing to produce locally. And I can't find any information out there that shows how that's actually feasible. So I'm not sure if this would be a feasibility study per se, because it's not necessarily implementing anything, but that's what I would like to do. And that's kind of an initiative that I would like to work on. And whether that be through the Farm to School grant or through the organizations that already exist, I just know that this needs to happen. And
well, unfortunately, like Deb mentioned, our schools are so diverse. You're going to get a much different financial picture from a school with 70 kids than one with 13,000.
Right.
You know, so if a feasibility study, if that's something that you were interested in pursuing, that feasibility study would have to take different levels into account, I would say. You'd have to take a look at, you know, small schools, moderately sized schools, large school districts, and have 3 different levels. Because in my opinion, somebody say like, Robert, if he wants to put that into a financial plan and go to the bank with it, he should actually go and have those initial conversations with those schools now, because those schools are going to be very different sized in Surrey than they are in Minot, and in Norwich, you know, Towner than they are. So he should actually go talk to those schools. That would be the best way. Are you willing to buy it? It's not a whole lot of work for them to get into their computer system and tell you what they're paying for it now and how much they're using a week. And that information they're pretty willing to share if they're willing to buy local. So on an individual case-by-case basis, I don't think it would be too difficult for a producer to get that business information if they wanted or needed it. If you were doing a larger feasibility study, like I say, I would suggest doing it in tiers: small schools, mid schools, large schools. And even then, that information, if a new producer was wanting to use it, is going to be, I guess, shot in the dark if you haven't talked to the school. Because another thing that we have found is schools are willing to play along. We have a school district here in North Dakota that was doing an awesome job with local, purchasing a good portion of it. And then there were staff turnovers and changes in people, and now they're not doing as much anymore. So really it almost becomes a personal contract as much as a business contract. Right.
And I really like that idea you said about the tiers, because what I also see is local school districts, like smaller or larger, the struggle they have with putting together these grants is they also, I mean, they equally need this information as to what this is going to cost them, like whether they're using the grant money for purchasing or if they're using it for staff development, education. Like there's this missing link to the actual like raw production side of things that is necessary for anybody to even know if this would work and to what extent it would work, and if it could work in a long-term setting, like a 5 to 10 year projection, if some local producer wanted to take that on, whether it be for the big school or the medium-sized school. Because if the grant money is only there for like a year or 3 years time frame, then that you can't run a business that way. Even though it is great that, you know, the students get to taste the local fare, it's not nothing that you can sustainably build on. And I guess that's probably what I'll keep going on with, is looking at that whole tiered model, because I think that information needs to be out there. So if anybody has any more information or wants to follow up with me on that, feel free, because that's what I'll be working on.
Quinn, are you still in touch with Keith?
Yep, working for him through actually, so we stay consistent in contact.
He would be a good person to talk with about feasibility studies.
Okay.
Neil Doty is the one who has done a lot of feasibility studies. He's a consultant. It does cost quite a bit of money to hire a professional consultant to do a feasibility study, but Keith and Neil could definitely tell you more about doing feasibility studies.
Okay, awesome.
And as I said before, if you need that background information about what was done before, just contact me.
Okay, cool. And then I guess broadly speaking to the group, since everyone's together, is what I'm saying making sense? Is that, like, in other people's opinion, a necessary link in this whole project of getting this to be a consistent thing that's available to people?
This is Karen, and I really appreciate your vision, Quinn, and you being able to speak it out loud. I think the state can continue on as it has, with one producer making arrangement with one school or a couple of schools, and continue to try to do the one-offs, or the potential for a real system, whether it's the state of North Dakota is large, as Deb said, but it's also small. And so with a number of people in it. So I think there's potential and promise, but whether people and schools and farmers can grasp the system concept is the key. So thank you so much.
Well, Quinn, I have something to tell you too. I mean, even without finding out what they're buying, who cares? They have to serve at least a half a cup of fruit and a half a cup of vegetables every single day. We have 110,000 students, 90,000 of them usually eat every day. So if you figured out that 90,000 a day in half cups of fruits, half cups of vegetables, that's a huge market. And then besides that, we have yet another program called the Fresh Fruit and Veggie Program, where we give them $50 per kid to serve like just a little sample of a different fruit or vegetable every day. That's where I think farm to school could really make headway, because you don't need even a whole half a cup serving. You can have just a little taste of something different. And those are, I mean, we give $70 million to these schools for breakfast and lunch. Fresh fruit and veggie, I think it's $2 million. They get that money all the time. That's not dependent on any crazy grant. So they have to serve fruits and vegetables. They just have to, no matter what. So there is a market there. I mean, I don't know that you have to do research to prove it, but if you took the 90,000 times the half cup and the half cup times 180 school days and came up with this huge amount of produce people need, or even meat that they need, they're buying millions and millions, I think $60 million. Oh, maybe that half of that's labor. So $30 million worth of food a year they're buying from somebody.
And I think that's a really good point, because I mean, they're like, if you looked at it just as a business, they're just a kitchen that's purchasing whatever is available. But the thing that I've figured out is that for that per meal cost that they have to fit it into, that almost always the bigger guys that are bringing in food from, Florida and California, and those fruits and vegetables are always going to be cheaper because their supply chains are more established, their volumes are much larger. For a local producer to enter that, like, not just, like the berry idea where it's like, yes, I love berries and that'd be great, but what if I want to supply all the pears in North Dakota as a producer consistently for a 10-year contract? Like, to understand what it would take to do that on a local level, that's what I don't think is, that's what I see is missing, because no one's done it.
I think you would have to supply to like a Cisco or a US Foods or Cashwa, because how is this person going to run their peers around to our 440 different buildings all over the state? You need we hardly even have any food distributors because they don't want to do it. Oh, we can't even hardly get milk anymore. It's a nightmare. So I don't think just some local producer is going to cover the whole state. They're not. It'd be too hard. They need to concentrate on an area that they can transport. Sorry, my clock dings every hour. They need to concentrate on an area they can service.
Okay.
Agreed, Deb. From a producer's perspective, that used to run all the way to Grand Forks and all the way to Minot and Jamestown and everywhere. It's just not economically feasible. You need to focus on an area that brings you the best return.
A couple folks have to leave at 11, but there is still some conversation going. I also want to acknowledge both Jamie, who's joined us, and phone number 701-226-8408. Would either of
Hi,
you?
Stephanie. Bill Davis speaking. Thank you.
Great.
I'm going to head out, but I do want to just say that document I sent out in the chat, I will edit it and email that out again this afternoon at some point. So with some of the information from this meeting. So
Thank you, Felicity. So with those of us that are left, is there anything else that you want to share?